Just in case you're wondering, 31 to be exact. And in this video, I'm going to share with you why multi-unit investing is more of an ideal investment in comparison to single-family properties. Take a look. All right, so many of you might be investing in single-family properties, right? And I'm talking about mainly buy and hold, where you're buying a property, you're holding on to it for the lifetime, so that way you can reap the rewards of passive income cash flow, okay? Now, when you're investing in real estate, there's pretty much two asset classes that I want to touch on. Okay, there's many of them, but I just want to touch on two in this video. Single-family and multifamily. Okay, now what's the difference between the two, especially in regards to the mortgage world? Single families are considered just one unit, but in the mortgage world is up to 4 units. Okay, so when you're going to acquire a 1 unit single family or a 4 unit, the mortgage underwriter is going to underwrite it as if it was a residential property, single family property. Okay, now the difference maker is when you get to 5 units and up, and the exception is with mixed use properties, such as if you had a tanning salon on the first floor and you had 3 residential units up top. So yes, technically that's 4 units, but being that it's mixed use, you have a commercial business on the bottom floor and 3 residential units up top, then that's also considered commercial mortgage as well. Okay, so what I'm sharing with you in the purpose of this video is multifamily or commercial mortgages. So I'm gonna use those terms interchangeably, okay? I'm gonna be discussing 5 units and up or mixed use properties. All right, so you can see the difference maker. So to make it very simple and plain, we're going to be talking about single families and multifamily, okay? 5 units and up. I'm gonna share with you the difference and what makes multifamily the most ideal investment. So let's jump into it. All right, so speaking of the word ideal is actually an acronym, right? And it stands for income, depreciation, equity, appreciation, and my favorite, leverage. So let's jump into it. All right, let's talk about the income. The main difference maker between income in regard to single family and multifamily, well, of course, is obvious. When you have a single family property, you're receiving income from one particular unit. Now, I would give single family properties credit because typically the average rent you receive for a single family is considerably higher than the amount you may receive from a multifamily. Of course, there's different factors in regard to the location of the property, the bells and whistles and the fizzle, the sizzle that's included in the property and all that good stuff. But on average, single family properties actually receive a higher rent and cash flow even more. However, there is a downside to single families in regards to the income. Well, that's obvious as well too, right? The downside is that you have a vacancy. And if you have that vacancy, guess what? You're receiving 0 income, right? But in regard to multifamily, let's say you go out there and you buy a 10 unit tomorrow and you have 1 vacancy. Well, that means you have 90% of the income still coming in to the point you still may be receiving income and cash flow and still be profitable. So that way you don't have to dig into your reserves to pay your mortgage, taxes, insurance, and all those other operating expenses. So in regard to mitigating the risk of having a vacancy, in my book, multifamily wins that one. Now, the next letter I would like to share, or the next letter in the acronym I'd like to share, is this depreciation expense. So depreciation expense is a phantom expense to reduce your tax liability, okay? So with single families, yes, you do get a depreciation expense. I think it's 27.5 years. So meaning if you bought a property for $100,000, a single family, you can use that purchase price that you acquired to depreciate that asset for the next 27.5 years. And don't get me wrong, you can also accelerate your depreciation as well. If you want more insight on this, just reach out to your tax professional for further details, right? Because I'm not a tax professional by any means. Now with multifamily, the depreciation is actually higher, and it's right here. So Daniel, you can go ahead and show the amount, because I don't know off the top of my head, so you can just show it right here on top of my head, literally. All right, so you actually have more years to depreciate that asset, so that way you can reduce your tax liability longer than you would with single family. And this is the main difference maker as well. You know, now I'm kind of throwing in a curveball. I'm gonna talk about employees, because you still might be an employee, right? And if you're receiving a W-2, receiving a paycheck, you probably noticed this already, but as soon as you receive your check, Uncle Sam already took their cut, right? They took taxes off the gross and you're receiving the net. But in regard to investing in real estate, especially real estate investing as a business, you're able to receive your income from your tenants and you're able to deduct all of your expenses, whether it's office space, right? You're using your home as an office, you can deduct a portion of your home to reduce your tax liability there. You reduce your tax liability through deducting your cell phone as well, gas when you're visiting properties, and there's many other expenses, okay? So those expenses, they actually go both ways in regard to single family and multifamily. All right, now let's get into the next letter. The next letter is equity. Now, when you're buying properties as an investor, you always want to purchase properties at a discount, okay? You always want to buy a property based upon the past, right? However, you're buying it for the future. You don't want to buy properties thinking like you're Miss Cleo, right? A crystal ball in which you can forecast what this property will be worth in the next 5 years, okay? You don't want to buy a property like that. And in fact, you want to do the opposite. You want to buy the property based upon its past performance. And that's called doing adequate due diligence, okay? And when you're doing that, you're making a safer bet. However, when you purchase the property, even off its past performance, you still want to see the potential value add if you're able to change a few things, such as increase the rents, decrease the expenses, and you make the property worth a ton more, okay? So when you're buying single family properties or multifamily properties, you can increase your equity simply by just having tenants in there, right? So when you're having a single tenant in a single family property, you're having one person pay down your debt. So they're actually increasing your equity in the property. And that's the beautiful thing about buying whole properties. You're having someone called a tenant build your wealth, right? Build your net worth, because they're paying rent to you in which you're paying down the debt and the property is being worth more from that debt pay down. But when you're doing multifamily, of course, the debt pay down will be a lot more, simply because you have more tenants. Now, I'm trying to compare everything from apples to apples and oranges, but of course, there's always exceptions to this. But let's get into the next letter because it relates to the previous one, to the E for equity. Appreciation. Appreciation is beautiful, right? With single families, what typically determines the appreciation rate? More than likely, it's the location, right? Of course, there's other factors depending on what type of appliances you have in the property, the square footage and all that good stuff. But it's mainly the location of the property which has a huge impact on the appreciation rate, meaning how much the property will be valued based upon the market. Now with multifamily, the thing I love best about that is that you can force the appreciation. How? By how you manage it. You can increase the revenue and decrease the expenses to the point you're making the property worth more. So it's based upon the performance of the asset. And that's why I typically love multifamily properties, because the appreciation rate is somewhat in my control and is based upon my management. And let's get into the last letter, the L, which stands for leverage. So with single family properties, you can leverage yourself into that property. You can get a mortgage, you can just get a mortgage, and that's pretty much it. Because as I shared before, with single family properties, the underwriters, the mortgage lenders who underwrite the mortgage, their main focus is on you, the borrower. Actually, 80% of their underwriting is based on you, the borrower. Whereas 20% of their underwriting is on the asset and the performance of the asset. But with multifamily, they turn that on its head, upside down, to the point where the majority of the underwriting for commercial mortgages is focused on the performance of the asset, as it should. Whereas 20% is on the borrower, right? So they still may want to see, your personal financial statement and see if you have some experience and all that good stuff. But they pretty much like to make sure that, the asset is producing cash flow, right? And that's what they want to see. Now with leverage with multifamily, you can get a mortgage, yes, just like single family, but you can also use seller financing, you can do partners, you can use these things I have in my hand. There's so many different creative financing tools out there in which you can buy these properties on repeat. Why? As I shared, their underwriting, their reason for approving you for the mortgage is not so much about you and where the money came from, but just about the performance of the asset. All right, guys, so there you have it. Hopefully that was informational for you and educational to the point that you can take some action. So speaking of action, if you're interested in learning more about how you get started with multi-unit investing, how to use creative financing tools, then we have a free training for you. And it's all about doing more of what works, right? And don't be skeptical. If you are skeptical, that's fair. I can see why, but just check our reviews if you would like to learn more. And Dan, you can just show the reviews right now as I speak. Now, if you're really interested in getting started, check out the free training because we'd love to help you. As always, guys, this is to your success. Continue to earn passively.
Let's go. Yo, I'm like an addict, do I gotta have it. I ain't even playing, got a really bad habit. If it moves, gotta grab it, fuse like a magnet. Lose, won't have it till I'm doomed in a casket. I ain't playing, got a weird mind. If you work 8 hours, I'ma work 9.